concern is that I'm confused. And I guess I'm confused because it seemed to me that the agenda item was used as a way to kind of surreptitiously bring in a whole nother agenda item, which is what's going on in organizing of LA National Convention. I've been involved with the Green Party for about a year, and I've been hearing this stuff about Green Party USA and all this kind of stuff, and it's really quite baffling to me that there's all this friction between us, between them. If I could finish. And then, to take the microphone, from what I see, Mike is working really hard on this convention. There's a lot of stuff that's coming down over this next year. The Nader candidacy, the convention, trying to make a show, trying to make a splash so that we look like a party that deserves support from people in this country. And this type of squabbling cannot be happening. It needs to end. And it needs to, if the Green Party USA needs to withdraw, because they're not even here organizing this thing. They're I don't know where they are.
I'm sorry, we are here and we are organizing, and I have been organizing. I mean,
it's not uncommon with national organizations that don't have a very strong national structure that the local group organizes the national convention. That's not uncommon. Yeah, I guess my concern is that this type of squabbling makes us look really amateurish, makes us look unprofessional. It's got to stop. Mike Feinstein is working very, very hard on this convention. We need to try and support him and the other people who are doing this and not keep bashing this kind of stuff.
With Mike, we're having meetings with Mike. This is a cooperative statement. I personally believe that we have got to stop bashing Green Party USA. It's a struggling group of people nationally just like yourselves. It is as green as can be. It has all the diversity and all the interests of democratic forces, and I myself find it the same. I think the gentleman that got to the mic is misunderstanding the intent of the squabble. And as a woman, I really do not want to be looked at as the initiator of the squabble. The proposal for, we would just like our oversight committee. I think it's important that the state make a commitment to the national gathering, and we'd just like to have a couple of other people on the oversight committee. That's all, to work with us. And I'm suggesting Lloyd as one of those people, and someone from the Women's Caucus. Thank you.
Are there any more concerns? Right, so I'm not sure how many people here are Santa Cruz locals that are visiting. Well, there's two things that we desperately need to make this work. We need volunteers out there on the streets gathering the signatures. Unfortunately, to do that, you have to be a Santa Cruz City resident. And the threshold is really high on this. We need to get 5,600 valid signatures, and that's in a city of about 40,000 registered voters. So we have a real uphill battle to make this work. So we need volunteers. So there's anyone here that lives in the city that wants to volunteer, please fill out. We'll be passing around cards with Andrea here, and we also have a little table out front. Those of you who don't live in the city, the big thing you can do is help out with some money, because as everyone here knows, campaigns take money to work. It's an unfortunate fact in this country, and considering we're up against a very organized opposition that has a very well-organized political machine, it's going to be a difficult uphill battle for us to make it work. So we're really hoping that we can set the stage for proportional representation by passing this here in Santa Cruz. And by helping us do this now, hopefully we're helping in the long run seeing PR be passed on the state and the national level. If we can get success here, I believe it'll get national media attention. It can really open up the whole debate. So I want to ask all of you that can help us out with some money. It would be fantastic, because we need to get this going. We need to make it work. How much time do we have? Okay, 4 minutes. Okay, so we have time for a couple quick questions.
We started talking about proportional representation about a year ago, a little bit more. Jim Stauffer and others really started bringing to the forefront of the Green Party. And we started an internal education process, and it sort of went along in fits and starts, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And the goal was to get locals to educate themselves and to start doing things in their local areas, voter initiatives, or now lobbying for the McKinney bill, different sorts of things to try and educate at the local level. And we were considering that a step towards doing something at the state level, some sort of state initiative, that we had to build a base of support in order to do that first. And then we would be working with groups like CalPERG and perhaps U.S. term limits and others towards doing a state initiative at some point down the road. So out of that process, Santa Cruz is the first local to actually say, okay, we're going to give it a shot, we're going to try and do a voter initiative. So I think they deserve a big round of applause or twinkle fingers or whatever we do. And that's it. Here it is, Santa Cruz.
Hi, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Scott Bugenthal, and I've been active with the Green Party here in Santa Cruz and statewide for about 5 years. And along with Richard Ochoa here, we are co-coordinating a campaign, as was mentioned, to bring preference voting to Santa Cruz. And I'm going to start out just by telling you a little bit about how we've set up this initiative. Then we're going to tell you what we're up against in terms of getting this passed, and then tell you what you can do to help support this. First off, what we're doing is in Santa Cruz right now, we have a 7-seat at-large city council where there's elections every 2 years, 3 seats up one session, 4 seats up the next. And what we want to switch it to is all 7 at once with the standard kind of preference voting system where you'll be able to rank the candidates in order of preference. And then the quotient we're using, I believe it's the Droop quotient for those of you who are into the PR know, which is any candidate then that gets 1/7 of the vote, the first place votes would be elected. And then those second place votes for that candidate would be transferred and so on down the line. Now we decided to do this in Santa Cruz at this time because there's been a push by conservatives in the town to bring district elections to Santa Cruz. And it seemed like striking while the iron was hot kind of a deal, where since right now people are talking about electoral reform in the city and how we can make the city council better, we thought we could propose this as an alternative that would appeal to both conservatives and progressives in the city. So we've gotten to the stage now where the initiative is registered with the city clerk. We are into the signature gathering phase of it. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Richard, who's going to tell you a little more about what we're up against and how we're going to make this work.
Hi, my name is Ricardo. As Scott mentioned, I'm the co-coordinator of the campaign. I'm also with the Regional Alliance for Progressive Policy here in the Central Coast area. And what's really important about what Scott mentioned is the background of the conservatives doing this petition campaign for district elections for a couple of reasons. First of all, while we were formulating this initiative, while we're in the process of it, they failed to qualify for the ballot. They came, by their count, about 200 signatures short to get on the November 1996 ballot. They feel that they got very close. Those 200 signatures, by the way, are not verified, so they may have been as many as 1,000 short. And you need about 5,600 to get on the ballot. They felt that they were very close, and so they're very likely to push again in the near future, which is one of the reasons we felt that it was important to strike while the iron was hot right now, before they become emboldened and push again for district elections. Part of the reason is this was very clearly an attempt in Santa Cruz to disenfranchise the student population. This is a community of about 40,000 registered voters, about 50 or 60,000 residents. 12,000 of them are using Santa Cruz residents. And conservatives want to put them all in one district instead of having them have an influence on an at-large basis. So now in the coalition work that we're doing, a lot of the students that were very opposed to district elections are coming around and supporting preference voting. We're going to be going to College Democrats tomorrow, and it looks like they will be endorsing the preference voting initiative. We've been reaching out to CalPERG, and apparently CalPERG in about a week or so is going to look at whether or not to endorse the local initiative, and if so, we can piggyback. We're already doing some of it, but we can kind of institutionally piggyback on the CalPERG campaign finance reform effort. and go out and get signatures for the statewide initiative, and then say, while you're at it, let's sign a local reform initiative that we're working on as well. We are reaching out, like was mentioned, to the conservatives in the community. We're going to college Republicans as well. And in this community of Santa Cruz, there's a very often neglected Latino population and African American population. There hasn't been, since I can remember, and I don't know if there's ever been, a Latino and African American representative on the City Council. And yet, with preference voting, I think that that does open up that door to have ethnic minority representation on the City Council. We are getting a lot of support from some labor activists, and we're hoping to get some of the institutional labor support. And that is for some very pragmatic local reasons. There's some initiatives such as the firefighters binding arbitration that's going to be on the March 96 ballot. That the firefighters feel like they've been shut out of the so-called progressive leadership in Santa Cruz. And so labor is feeling more and more frustrated with what is going on in the progressive leadership in the city of Santa Cruz, and is looking at preference voting because they realize that one of those seats on the city council should be a labor seat. So we're hoping to reach out, like was said, to labor, to conservatives, to environmental activists, to students up on campus. And the biggest obstacle that we're running up against is the progressive leadership of this town. This is a town, I don't know if you've read, that has supposedly a socialist feminist mayor who is leading the campaign at this point against preference voting. And this is the kind of struggle that we're facing. There's an organization called the Santa Cruz Action Network in the city of Santa Cruz that has yet to take a position on it. We're going to be going to the membership. And at times the membership has kind of risen up and led the organization, and the leadership has had to follow. We're hoping that this will be one of those instances because much of the leadership has made clear that they feel that proportional representation is a great idea at the state level. They feel it's a great idea at the national level. They even think it's a great idea in other cities. But they don't think it's a very good idea in this city because we already have a progressive city council, so we don't need it, but the rest of the world does. It sounds a little bit elitist to some of us, but hopefully the grassroots in the organization will realize this and kind of rise up and give us an endorsement. What we need right now, though, is some support from not only local community but statewide activists on proportional representation that want to see a success story on this. And we're the only game in town in terms of having a petition on the streets. And we hope to also be the first success story on proportional representation. So Scott wanted to say a few words on that.
The system we're doing is a preference voting system. It'll still be the city, the entire city, right? But it works where any candidate gets 1/7 of the vote will because there are 7 city council seats, will get elected. So what that does is it lowers the threshold of the number of votes needed. So obviously it's because it's a nonpartisan race, it's not by party lists or anything like that. It's just a pure preference voting system. But that lowers the threshold. Right now, a candidate needs about 25-30% to get elected. It'll lower it down to about 14%. So an organized minority can really get elected. Okay. Was there another? For those of you that have checkbooks, you make the check out to Frisky, F-R-I-S-C-Y. That's fair representation in Santa Cruz. Yes. Okay. We're going to hand the microphone back over now to Steve Hill, who's going to introduce, I believe, Rob Ritchie is going to be speaking first. And thank you all very much for your support. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Santa Cruz. We have more of the copies of the books for people who want. There was someone else that came up earlier and we didn't have copies here. Here you go. I have another great pleasure after, because in a sense he's been my compatriot in proportional representation, and I guess in some ways my boss as well. He's the executive director of the Center for Voting and Democracy, Rob Ritchie, and the Center for Voting and Democracy and Rob have been at the forefront of putting proportional representation back on the national agenda of the United States. You know, most of the democracies in the world are using proportional representation, and here in this country, we're barely even talking about it, even though it offers so much to so many people who are disenfranchised today. And it was just a glint in Rob and a few other people's eyes just 3 years ago. Just 3 years ago, this movement started again here in the United States, and it really has come a remarkable way, considering that it's only 3 years old. 1 minute left, okay. And so I guess without further ado, this is Rob Ritchie from Washington, D.C. And Rob is here. He and I have been making the rounds in the Bay Area, in Sacramento, talking to editors and city council members and lots of other people trying to make good connections as we push this movement forward. So Rob's been pretty busy since he's been here.
Great. I will definitely be quick. Nice to see you all, and nice to see that proportional representation is being talked about both for California and in places like Santa Cruz. And I think that the Santa Cruz initiative could be quite historic. You know, there hasn't been a city to adopt proportional representation with an initiative in the U.S. for about 40 years. But there actually was a strong movement earlier, and I think there's clearly going to be one soon. And I think that whichever one is first will always have that to say. And that, so maybe that'll be right here in Santa Cruz. Just to stress, this is a national movement that has really grown quite a bit in just the last 3 years. And the whole controversy over the Voting Rights Act and means to enforce the Voting Rights Act is really pushing the agenda in places where it otherwise really wouldn't be talked about, but the South and Texas, places like that. I think that this really is on the table, and setting models, having this be used is going to make a tremendous difference. And that so what's going on here is going to be dramatic. Just hearing the folks talk about Santa Cruz, that the local majority isn't interested, they think it's good elsewhere. I mean, that's going to happen everywhere, because people don't really accept what I call a golden rule of representation. Give unto others the representation that one would want for oneself. But I think that's a principle we can build on, and I think there is a gut fairness to proportional representation that I think can catch on. And I think there's a clear gut interest in third parties in a true multi-party system that is really what proportional representation is all about. And the implications of that, as you all know, are profound. And I think that it's exciting to see this in action. And sorry I missed most of the session, but I'll hear about it, and I hope you all create more news soon. So thanks. We have some materials in the back, and I'm sure there's other materials around, but if this is all new to folks, to some people here, we have plenty of information. So thanks a lot.
Need is firm resolve among those active Greens who are concerned about the state party that they will take on the responsibility of being a CC member. I'm not calling this an honor, although Will suggested yesterday that it is an honor to be asked to assume the responsibility. But don't look at CC as an honor, look at it as a way to work hard to get the Green Party to succeed. And changing the structure isn't going to change anything unless we change people's willingness to serve on the coordinating committee. I urge you all to think about taking it on for yourself for the period of 18 months, which is the term.
Became active.